know your neighborhood, know the historical value, know what the selling time was and what the asking and selling times were. Without that, you could be off very quickly, and you could spend a lot of time wasting your time.
That's local appraiser Mark Adams. He's one of the many local appraisers who does what the internet or AI cannot. On this episode of the SLO County Real Estate Podcast with Hal Sweasey, Mark gives insight about the many factors that come into play when assessing the value of your property or the home you're looking to purchase. And surprisingly enough, the cliche of location, location, location has a fair amount of merit to it. Here's your host, James Bueno.
San Luis Obispo Real Estate Podcast. Hal Sweasey's here. John Turner's here. Gentlemen, how are you doing?
I missed the table, and now I got used to keeping my hands on the table. Now I got no table.
I'm adjusting. I'm changing.
I don't like change. I'm not good with change.
Yeah, I'm
learning.
I'm trying to make it better. As soon as I get it down,
it's all
correctly. Good. Jeff Kingman is here. How are you, sir?
Doing well. How are you guys doing?
On camera.
Yeah.
Your favorite.
Yep. Looking good, Jeff. Love that on camera stuff.
Hal, we have a guest with us. You want to talk about him real quick?
Yeah, absolutely. In our business, we have lots of people we rely on, whether they're lenders or home inspectors or escrow people, and appraisers are one of the big ones. So I've got Mark Adams, who is a phenomenal appraiser, and if ever we have questions, I'm going to call Mark first because he's so thorough and so good at what he does, and he knows the market so well. So, Mark, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Glad to be here.
How long have you been appraising property?
Over 32 years.
Yeah, all right here in the county?
Right here in the county.
Where are you from?
I'm from the Bay Area. Came down here, went to Cal Poly.
Did you? Okay.
And
Go
stayed.
Mustangs.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, so I'm glad I stayed here.
When did you finish at Cal Poly?
I finished in 1980.
1980. Okay,
Yeah.
we were too far apart.
I got an important question for you,
Yes.
Mark.
Go ahead.
Giants or A's?
Oh, no.
Giants, my friend.
Okay, atta babe.
Okay, so he can stay.
I love this guy.
He can stay on. First, let me ask you this. So you work independently.
Right.
You're an independent contractor. But when you started, was that common?
No, what happened was I worked for Bank of America, and they, in those days when you worked for them, you had to sign a piece of paper saying you're like appraising as if it's your own property, and you take that serious. When licensing was coming about, but even prior to that, they would send us to 3 classes anywhere in the nation every year. And they would bring in contractors, architects, economists. It was probably the most thorough education. I was like getting a master's degree. They took it extremely serious because the banks took back those properties in those days. It was a very different deal.
Right.
So they were very serious about it. So the training was excellent. We had mentors, and they had the head reviewer. All the people they'd pull your files and they'd drive your. I mean, it was done very well actually. So I felt very fortunate to get that background.
So that made you good at what you do, right?
It gave me a solid background. I think having the interfacing with different experts all the time really gave us a leg up on understanding cost and changes in the market, and having the top people come in and explain that, especially when you're learning that. So I think it really helped me.
Do any banks have
None.
appraisers?
None now. Most of them don't now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
all
just
gone away.
subbed it up.
Right, subbed it out. Yeah.
Just for the perspective of our viewers and listeners, how many appraisals a year do you write?
Hundreds.
Hundreds.
Yeah.
Wow.
But not as many now, but I do different types of estate appraisals, and different things have different problems. There's all kinds of, there's appraisals for birth, death, estate planning, division of properties, buyouts, refis, purchases.
Yeah, not just sales.
Oh my, that's becoming an insignificant part of it.
I'll be darned.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't have thought that.
So what do you think the biggest change you've seen in the last 4 or 5 years, either in the market or the appraisals, or what would you notice? Because you are a wealth of information.
I've noticed in the market, the Fed kept the rates low for a long time.
Yep.
And so, everyone's I noticed a lot of people shifted to 15-year loans, 30-year loans, 3%, 2.5%. And so I saw this kind of building up, and I was kind of wondering how these people ever going to let go of these loans once they, if rates ever go up. Well, we're living that reality now, and we're finding out that you're going to a 3% to a 7%. That's a tough climb. So we've kind of frozen the market in time, and it's making it very difficult. In neighborhoods now, we don't have sales to look at, because some of these neighborhoods, they'll have a sale once every 6 or 8 months. It's not uncommon, where we used to have dozens of sales in a normal market. Stuff's moving and stuff, and now people are really frozen to come here. And I think during COVID, San Francisco and LA arrived, and they're not turning back. You've got the beach, Paso Robles, and I've just noticed the influx of people. And I noticed going into homes how many more people are working in San Francisco. They live here. They get on a 30-minute flight, and car picks them up. And I'm always asking, why did you buy here? And it just seems to be a whole change of demographics, the way we're working from home. Distance doesn't matter, and people are still arriving. So as you know, Hal, when homes come on the market, they're being snapped up. Yeah. Especially a decent home. I mean, we're still seeing overbids at 7%. It hasn't affected the market at all.
Yeah. We talk about that because it does constrict the supply. So it may take some sort of change for that to happen. So you talk about the change in demographics, which is interesting. So how has that changed, like the demand for certain types of properties, this remoteness or whatever, all the changes we're seeing?
Well, you're seeing families buy homes, and I've had a number of them in 4-bedroom homes, and I couldn't, for me, 4 bedrooms used to be the extra room. What do you do with it? And I always ask them, why do you buy a 4-bedroom home? And they have 2 kids, so each child has a room, and mom and dad has a room, and the 4th bedroom serves as a dual office, because I find that a lot of couples they're working various degrees. Like the husband might work full time at home, she might work 2 days a week, and they've set the offices up much like the studio. I've seen really intricate setups when you walk into that room. So business now is taking place in the home, and they're not. They're happy because they're not commuting. They live in the Bay Area, and they don't have to. They can fly up there now instead of living in that lifestyle, and they just feel like their quality of life has increased. So that 4th bedroom seems to really be in play again.
Yeah.
So you talked about all the different reasons that appraisals are needed. What is the purpose of the appraisal from your perspective to kind of help educate our audience?
Well, Fannie Mae let's face it, Fannie Mae they are the loan people, and Freddie Mac. So the appraisal, what we're doing is validating the value. Right. So the whole portfolio is pure, it's covered. So you've created security in the market like we've never seen before. And Fannie Mae is very strict they are checking, they have a massive computer that checks each appraiser, each adjustment, each address. They'll send you a letter out of one little thing saying, we just noticed this one thing. It's automatically generated from a computer. Their eyes are on every neighborhood, every street in America. It's much more thorough. Remember last time they couldn't find the loans. All that is accounted for now. So but what I think it does for someone always worried about buying now, well, what if am I buying at the top of the market? Well, I think you're buying at a much more. I think that and I know all the rules and regulations. They get really old, but in a sense, they're securing your investment because the restrictions are much more. The credit is much more tight and severe. So they're protecting you and your investment ultimately. So when you buy in this level, you're safe. You're not going to be on the downslide of a market because they did a bunch of no money down loans. So overall, I think it's overall improved our situation. And then we're in a situation if a realtor tries to influence us, John, we have an 800 number. We can call the federal government or state government, and they're investigated immediately. They're protecting the integrity of their portfolio. And yes, it does. I know sometimes people think, oh my gosh, the appraiser. But when you look at the entire system, it's working better than it's ever worked before. You don't hear of massive defaults in residential loans. Have either one of you? I'm sure you have it. So it's much safer.
So when you appraise a house at, let's say, we'll just pull a number out of a hat, $1 million. What is that saying to the people that are part of the transaction? Is there a plus or minus factor, like you're taking a poll, or how exact? Is this an exact science? What are we talking about?
When a house is selling for $1 million or $1.8 million or whatever, an home district, and you say, well, what is that house worth? $1.8 million, and there's no comps, right?
Right.
And that's a problem right now. So the first thing I do is before I told Hal this, before I put on my GPS and start driving around, I know where I'm at, what that neighborhood is worth, what is the historical value of that neighborhood. You have to, those are very important things. So I'll look at a comp a year old that's kind of similar, and I'll time adjust it, 150,000, whatever it is, the number, bring it up to current, and then I'll know that it's in the ballpark, because that allows you to do a fair evaluation. And then you can go to, like Flora or San Luis Drive, somewhat comparable neighborhoods to start evaluating. But that's very important. So you just don't go out and get I'm going to run over to Foothill, and you've already lost $200,000 on your drive over there. So you really have to know where you're at and what you're comparing it to. And it's very difficult these days because the sales are not there.
So that $1 million house that I now have in escrow, and you do an appraisal, and morally and ethically, you go, I'm at 950 on this thing. How does that impact the outcome of the transaction? And I know somebody's going to give you a phone call and go, "Are you sure?" Right?
They really don't call that much and say, "Are you sure?" anymore.
Okay.
There's very strict things, but usually when you're like at 975. And it's selling for $1 million, okay? And you look around, there's zero inventory, and homes in this neighborhood have historically sold over asking price. You can pull all that stuff up. They've generally sold under 1 week. I think you better look at your appraisal at that point.
Okay.
Okay. I mean, if you're going to miss something, it has to be way off in a big number that doesn't make sense. Because when you're in a few percentage points in this kind of market, you really want to look at that carefully. And that's what I'm saying. Know where you're at, know the historical value, know what they sold for, were they selling over asking, and you go to Ann Home, Flora, and San Luis Drive, it'll tell you, the historical stuff will tell you immediately where you're at.
Sounds like a combination of science and common sense. Especially
the common sense. When you're to come in at 980 and there's nothing available. I'm dealing with one like that now. It's a 4-bedroom, 2-bath, level home, completely remodeled. It's not mine, but it's like 25,000 short. Nothing available. The old town Rio Grande, and it's just like, wow.
You're saying you weren't appraising that, someone else was, and you got the call because what do you people go, boy, somebody came in at this, and another person, as the appraisal. So if they're not familiar, an appraiser's not familiar with the area, they're going to be at a disadvantage in trying to determine the value. Obviously,
know your neighborhood, know the historical value, know what the selling time was, and what the asking and selling times were. Without that, you could be off very quickly, and you could spend a lot of time wasting your time.
Yeah. So what's the range for an appraiser to be considered a local appraiser? Like, how far do you go away from San Luis Obispo, let's say?
I go to San Luis to Nipomo.
Okay.
That's it.
You don't go
North County?
Very seldom now.
Interesting.
I'll do once in a while. I'll go up there, and I used to be the man for all seasons, but I haven't enough. I just say very local. I kind of keep it short now.
A lot of times I'll deal with a seller or buyer, and they'll look online, and I won't mention names, but you can plug in an address, and it'll tell you what the property's worth, right? Probably imagine what I'm talking about. Why don't those types of services? Why don't banks rely on those versus someone like yourself?
Well, if you look at like an area like Ann Home, and they've done an addition, a kitchen remodel, they've opened up the floor plan, you might be missing $200,000, $300,000 in value easily. It can go one way or another for you. You can overvalue it or undervalue it. In LA, it might work with miles and miles of tract homes, but in this area, from Flora and Home to San Luis Drive, in even the foothills area, the homes are custom built. It just doesn't work.
So I'm hearing you say the big aggregators that Hal's talking about are missing the common sense piece.
Yeah, you have a lot of variances in these homes. In these certain neighborhoods, these homes have been rehabbed extensively over the years, and hundreds of thousands of dollars have been poured into them, and you're missing that, and that needs to be picked up. And what is the potential for an ADU? It's an 8,000 square foot lot, and he's got a perfect area for it. These days, people, they buy the home and say, "Gosh, this can fit 1,000 square foot ADU." Mom can, whatever the reason, that's value. These days, it's value.
Yeah.
So that's important those things have to be, and because people, they ask me to do, I have a couple of estate appraisals near Cal Poly, and they said, well, just throw something. Well, one of them's a vacant lot on Albert for a huge amount of land, and the other one is a good-sized chunk of land with a small home. But you're in the golden triangle of Cal Poly, okay? Right. You add some rooms on, an ADU, and you can turn $4,000 a month into $10,000 a month. So what is that worth?
So you can't really put a value on a property very well, but like unless I use Temecula where they have 3,000 home tract homes or whatever. So you have three different plans.
It works great.
Yeah. So you can go okay, but here location matters, lot matters. So you can't just get it from a aerial photo and try to figure out what that property is worth.
And we have the money here to remodel and do ADUs. I mean, we typically do, and that's taking place in this market. And potential buyers are looking at that. They don't mind, they're looking at it saying, I can put the ADU, I can do the remodel. So it's completely different than other areas.
Yeah. It's fun to see how the nuances of pricing, because I talk to people about price all the time, and you're always a great resource, and we bounce back and forth on, okay, I've got this situation, what do you think? And how much value is this kind of unknown abstract thing, whether it's a usable lot where you can go right outside, which people like, or that fourth bedroom or as an office, or what's an additional dwelling unit worth, right? And we those have gone up in value in terms of my opinion, I think yours as well, right? Depending on the size and location of those things.
And the cost to remodel now has gone up substantially, in which I was guilty of underestimating that. And we had a property a while near West and Home, and I had actually brought a contractor over there because I thought, why was I off? I hate that.
Yeah.
Why? And I brought him over there, and he went through it with me. He goes, yeah, you're $500,000-$600,000 to correct, and he goes in the bottom line, he said, level the home.
Right.
Okay.
So that's your job, because you take one of the few sales you have and you make an adjustment up or down based on adding, subtracting, improving, right?
Right.
And those adjustments are bigger now because the cost of getting stuff done is more expensive.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you have unique properties. You may have a single level home on a level lot with a great view.
Yeah.
Okay, you can use all the math and all the common sense you want. I guarantee you, when it comes to the market, that thing's going to go hundreds over.
Yeah.
I mean, you can just smell it, see it,
right,
and it does.
So when you come up with an appraisal amount, and you're just in a way kind of second guessing yourself.
Absolutely.
You're not submitting that to the bank that's asking for the appraisal until you maybe check in with some of these other people in the industry that help you come to a final conclusion.
Yeah,
right?
there's a cost. You do the cost. You run through your comps. You check. You'd be foolish if you don't know good brokers like Hal. No one knows everything, and people like Hal, they're on the front lines every day. They're dealing with buyers and sellers. They're dealing with the pending sales. Everything you're looking at MLS that's sold is ancient history, whether it's 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. So you're looking for the most current. I call probably 5 to 6 pending sales a week, saying, "Hey, what's the status on this? 3 offers, 2 days. No, it's been on the market 2 weeks, nothing." And you're trying to look for trends because everything else is past history. Every closed sale. So you're trying to stay on the edge. And as you know, it's very challenging these days. This is not an easy game.
And for the listeners, that level of diligence that you bring is why you're so good. And you take it so much pride. I mean, when you put a value on a property and then later it sells, you want to know what it went for. Mark double checks everything.
I do.
Right? How did I do? He's always measuring himself, and I've always loved that about you and the effort it takes. And a lot of agents may not do that. They'll just pull it up, or if they never see the house, like there's out-of-town brokers, they have not talked to the current properties that are in escrow, right? About how's it going to come out, above, below, lots of offers, not many. That's what makes you so good at what you do. So thanks for being professional.
Well, I appreciate you guys and how you handle your office is always accessible, and you always call back, and you always give straight answers, and it's very helpful. And the most difficult people to deal with are out-of-town brokers because they don't know the market and they can't add to the situation.
Right.
That's what I've just even debate whether to call him or not.
Well, Hal, I've heard you talk about this Mark Adams guy for 7 years. It's the first time I've gotten to meet him.
Yes.
Now I know why you talk about him all the time. Mark, this has been great. Thank you so much. I've learned a ton from you.
Yeah. You might like him as much as you like Sam Adams, right?
Sam Adams. Sam Adams is a good guy, too.
I probably couldn't compete with him.
I like Sam a little colder.
Yeah, right? Yeah.
I have a question for Mark, and I'm remiss because I know the next guest is going to come walking in here, and I got to know. During 2020 and 2021, we sold a house. House sold our house in 2020. We'd have appraisers come up, and you know, it was that COVID time. So people couldn't get out of their car. They're taking pictures. They're screaming out the window to me as I'm doing yard work or whatever the case is. This guy pulls up and he pulls into my driveway, snaps a picture as I'm sitting there in my driveway. I'm like, what are you doing? And he goes, oh, just appraiser. And then he backs out of my driveway. He takes off and then he stops and he goes, you guys just sold your house, right? I was like, yeah. And he goes, how much? I go, $490. He goes, okay, cool. And he takes off. What was that time like for your business?
It was a non-issue. I got into 99% of the homes. The families either got in the car and left, or they stood 6 feet back. I wore a mask. I did alcohol, and I continued on with my business. I don't really like some of these. I said I turned them down. I said if I can't see the property,
right.
I can't give you an appraisal, and I'm not going to sign my name to something I'm not comfortable with.
That's cool.
There's your answer.
I thought that was really absurd and a weird way to do business. And it was somebody trying to get a comp in the neighborhood.
Yeah,
and it was like.
No, you always.
That's what you guys qualify
But
with.
you always give, because I do. You're in a neighborhood, and when you're looking at comps or so forth, you always give your card out to that person and identify yourself. And I show them the comp list and explain to them, especially if there's families or so forth. You want them to feel comfortable.
Right.
You want them to know the reason. That's very important to do that.
Yeah.
And to clarify, Mark, the alcohol part was to get your hands clean, not you're slugging down a shot before you leave the house.
No, I may die tomorrow, so let's do it. No.
I knew JT was going to say that.
That's awesome.
About Mark, but I'm not JD.
That's awesome.
I've never had a slam foot on that. Okay.
Well, you said using alcohol. A lot of people were using alcohol.
That was the Sam Adams we were talking about right there.
Your ears perked up. All right.
Jeez.
On that note, all right.
We're having too much fun. Let's get out of here.
That's right. All right, guys. Thank you, everybody, for listening and watching. We appreciate y'all, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to the Hal Sweasey Podcast. Be sure to subscribe and rate this podcast. Check for it in your feed for the latest information on the San Luis Obispo County market. The SLO County Real Estate with Hal Sweasey Podcast is available wherever you get your podcast and on halsweasey.com, where you can find current listings and other real estate tips. halsweasey.com, that's HALSWEASEY.com. I am James Bueno, Director of Marketing for the Hal Sweasey Group. If you're looking for anything real estate, give us a call, 805-781-3750.
San Luis Obispo Real Estate Podcast with Hal Sweasey is also on YouTube. Now you can see people talk about real estate in one of California's hottest markets. Get the latest episode on the podcast page at teamsweasey.com or subscribe to Hal Sweasey on YouTube. Hal Sweasey is a licensed California real estate broker. DRE number 011119111. The SLO County Real Estate with Hal Sweasey Podcast is a production of AGM Podcasts. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.